Trappy. Um, if I had to say anything about puzzle games, if you really, really want to push novelty, it's puzzle games, generally speaking. So, puzzle games constantly push forth new rules that are abstraction. So, it's not they're not necessarily transferable skills per se. Like the literal playing of puzzle games don't necessarily have transcribable skills, but the act of puzzle solving does. And if one feels like they seem to habitually have high learning curves or high effort barriers to tackling new concepts, puzzle games can offset that. It's probably the form of entertainment that can still be considered entertainment and not work to lower the barrier of learning new abstraction. Abstraction is legit, in my opinion, the highest form of effort for those who consider themselves intellectually vigorous. Otherwise, you can do physical things like go out and play basketball and stuff. Those are very high effort too. It's just we're talking about the mental. So if you ever feel like learning new things and constantly having to say, nah, I don't want to learn something new, puzzle games is the lowest barrier you can have, in my opinion, that can still feel like a game but not necessarily work. I'm saying this as a way to empathize with people who have trouble approaching new things that they are not comfortable with, or approaching learning something from scratch, so to speak, like starting over. That is a very high mental state, and every single puzzle game tends to do that. They try to do that. That is the hallmark of that's the gold standard of puzzle games. They want you to feel like you're starting from scratch, which is very high intellectual barrier. Most of the time, like, I'm gonna play Across the Obelisk now. This is comfort zone. I am not intellectually being challenged to reframe my form of thinking. It is adding and enriching, it's bootstrapping, it's refining my already very well rehearsed logical systems. There's no abstraction involved in playing deck builders for the time being. If there is a game that's out there, it would be the total package, like something that's out of the box, had to start from scratch. That's my favorite thing to do. And to me, I don't think it stops at puzzle games. If I have to learn something new, it feels the same thing. I feel the same thing about having to learn something new. So if someone wanted to like insist that I learn Mandarin, I'll learn Mandarin much like I learn a puzzle game. It's the abstraction part. Those are the skills that you acquire from puzzle game. There are puzzle games that are like sequels. Those are lower barrier. Like, for example, to play Portal 2, having played Portal 1, I was on board because the underlying logic is still there. But if you went from Portal to the Talos principle, some of the stuff in Portal might actually make it harder for you to solve things in Talos principle. So puzzle games are inherently abstraction. They're trying their best to make you feel like you have to blank out your mind and start all over again. And the downside of that is you can't put down, it's very unlikely that when you put down a puzzle game, coming back to it is going to be like riding a bike, because it's a non-transferable skill. you are more likely to do things that make sense to you but doesn't make sense in the puzzle game. Like, for example, pushing a box. You have to orient yourself to always think of just the rules that the game has, instead of the mainstream games and casual games where like everyone keeps talking about, does this make sense? It's like, well, puzzle games don't have to make sense. You just have to operate in its abstraction universe. Why can't I just pull the log across? It's like, this is a pushing game. You can't pull anything. You can't lift anything. Well, why can't I just jump across? Like, you can't jump either. Those are the rules. And that's kind of what makes puzzle games attractive to me, in my opinion. These games I play for optimization. In no way, and I love these games a lot, but in no way are they intellectually challenging. Why can't I just use yeah. So the difference is it's that, right? I'm getting my satisfaction from different things. Like Across the Obelisk affirms to me how much I like. Actually, you know, I'm kind of curious. Can you unlock this? Can you unlock stuff just using this mode? Every game would be different as you progress through the... Oh, it's just the void. Never mind. They can't actually use this mode to unlock the other stuff. But yeah, it's not for everyone. If you like... We still gotta unlock this guy, which we need a rare... We need a rare encounter. And I play puzzle games, I would say it's like the third most common type. Most of the games do kind of sort of play like puzzle games. Like if you take a roguelike deck builder, like Across the Obelisk, if you made it so that there are only very finite modes of success, and you have to look for those things and understand the probability of those things, then it becomes playing Minesweeper. So to me, how can I get someone to understand, how can you reduce something into a puzzle game? The natural properties of a puzzle game is to restrict the solutions to as few as possible. Generally speaking, it's actually pretty remarkable to have a game that is completely designed and somehow there are multiple solutions, which a Monsters Expedition did have multiple solutions. Fictitious and I talked about it. There's some flexibility, but the gold standard of a puzzle game is to be inflexible. You are forced to think in a way. You could encounter a puzzle game that's like your jam, and that can help you identify what you're really good at, like inherently. So there are puzzle games like Portal, like I blitzed through that. That's great. That's amazing. And then I have a Monsters Expedition, and I've realized that I can't stop thinking in a way that makes a Monster Expedition really, really difficult. Because I keep thinking like a Pepega. And that's fantastic. It's my favorite part. I like when I'm challenged, so I know people can't empathize with that too often, but I like being inept. It means I have a lot of things I have yet to be discovered about myself. I guess we're gonna do these guys again, right? Oh yeah, I totally forgot. I totally forgot to get the one pet, so we're gonna get that one pet I discovered by chance. Do I need anything? Draw an extra card? How do I get more energy? When this hero plays a card that costs 1 or more. Wait, is there a limit to this? There isn't. But it has to cost 6. So I can't just make it reduce the costs and then it still counts. I don't think that's how it works. Did I discover last time that was useful? Was bleed useful? Bleed blah blah blah. Charges that apply +2. Bleeds on enemy instead. Deal damage at the end of turn. I don't want end of turn stuff. Was poison at the end of turn? Yeah. Maybe maybe I abandon poison and go straight bleed. I'm keeping that. I don't want this guy to bleed out. Alright, so I guess we just go for HP. I'm gonna switch Sylvie to bleed, and we're just gonna ham bleed. Yeah, let's just ham bleed. Yeah, we can still use pierce damage or... Oh, do I want to go scout? I mean, sight as well? No, I think that's juggling too many things. We'll play another puzzle game in the future. I should really play all the room games from like the old ones all the way up because I didn't record them. Or like I didn't share them or anything. So we should play all the room games again. I really like the room games. It's the most casual thing I can think of that I really enjoy when it comes to puzzles. Yeah, the room is a great one. Why do you think most people wouldn't empathize with being challenged most of the time? I get the opposite feeling with how popular PvP. Well, you see, PvP is... That's not... So, what is the biggest challenge in PvP? What do you think it is? It's not. They don't empathize with me. Like, challenge is not it. People? I don't think people is the biggest challenge. Or, I don't think other people who self-select themselves into a game is the most challenging. The most challenging is throwing people into a random thing with no objective. Battle Royales are not challenging people. They are pre-selecting people to do the same thing in a closed system. So when people self-select themselves into something, it's not challenging compared to being obligated to do something they didn't choose themselves. The puzzle game is the closest you can get to that because it is the devs forcing you to think something that you have not pre-selected yourself to do. Technically, it's the closest to that. When you enter a PvP, everyone knows that they're going into a battle royale. They behave a certain way. In fact, we can think about it this way. If you go into a battle with someone, you have a commander who knows everything about their enemy because their enemy has properties that select themselves into the army that they have. Well, they would be at an incredible advantage for the commander that understands what they're getting themselves into than a commander that's self-selecting themselves into what they do best or what they can do best. People play battle royales because they like battle royales. They're competing against other people. They do, but you're not comparing zero and unpredictable solutions. People who are placed in unpredictable situations produce more unpredictable situations than people who are placed in expected situations. You're comparing in a void. What are you comparing it to? You're comparing it to not playing against a person. That's apples and oranges. I'm talking about comparing people being placed in unexpected situations, like a puzzle game. They will produce unpredictable situations. It will be very challenging. It would even cause them to quit. Battle Royales, you are less, if you self-select yourself into a Battle Royale game, PvP, you are less likely to quit than a puzzle game. Why are puzzle games less popular than Battle Royales? People are more likely to quit puzzle games. It's the inherent nature of being forced and obligated to think a different way than you naturally want to think. So it's challenging in a different way, but it is more predictable than placing people in an unpredictable situation. They don't even have to create the unpredictable situation because they don't understand the situation at all until they do. When you pick up another Battle Royale game, there's some predictability in what it involves. When you pick up a puzzle game, you are less likely to know what to predict because you don't know until you understand the system. You are not relearning a system when you're going into a Battle Royale game. You have less learning to do. It makes it casual friendly. It makes it mainstream. It makes it more popular. It's more streamlined. Those things create popularity. So unpopular things inherently are less predictable. One day, maybe Battle Royale games are unpopular and puzzle games are popular, then I would flip the script. More people are going to be conditioned. So when you have an unpredictable and you have to find a way to get out of it, a PvP game that isn't a puzzle, it's not restricting an unpredictable. So when you have an unpredictable situation and you have to find a way to get out of it in a PvP game, okay, that isn't a puzzle, it's not restricting in an unpredictable way. It's not, because you have human players. Humans are something you can predict and not predict. When you're playing against a system, the closest thing you can hope for is that the person who designed the system was deliberately designing it for you. Now, there is still a chance that this group of people think exactly like you and made a puzzle game that will be exactly the way you think. But the goal of a puzzle game is to do not that. The goal of a PvP game is not that. It actually aims to benefit the player and encourage them to be good at what they're good at, which is why people play the PvP game. You are not inherently expected to be good at a puzzle game from the start. In a PvP game, you have some foundations that make it a competitive PvP game. The foundations are predictable. Because you're competing with other people you empathize with. You can't empathize with a puzzle game unless it's still possible, the rarer chance that the people who are making the puzzle game think exactly like you or deliberately made a puzzle game that you already know how to solve. That would make the puzzle game very, very dissatisfying. That you play a puzzle game and it's like thinks exactly like you. It's just the intrinsic goals of the game. Now, I'm not saying that you can't find challenge in both. Absolutely. You can be challenged for life in a PvP game. That for sure. It's just the challenge is very different. And if we have to compare it, the goals are fundamentally different. A puzzle game is meant to make you not know what you're doing at first. A PvP game is more likely to make you want to put everyone on an even ground so you can compete. Puzzle games don't do that. They don't distinguish you. Like you could be really, really terrible at a puzzle game. It doesn't really matter. That's not the goal of the goal is not to make everyone feel like they're competent. In a PvP game, it is. The goal is that everyone has a fair shot at winning, or give you the perception anyways that you can win. You can quit a puzzle game and probably feel not as bad about it. If you quit a battle royale, well, that's a personal statement on your own competence. If you're satisfied with it, then you're satisfied with it. Oh wait, I'm not using Fury. What am I doing? You can agree to disagree though, for sure. It's already tough enough to compare the games in general, like because there's a lot of aspects that can be challenging to more people than they're not. I'm just saying that the goal of design is very different. And it makes the argument a little bit more compelling, or it makes the interpretation of the games more compelling. You could see it as a way that the puzzle game developer is challenging the player, while the battle royale games are creating an environment that people can challenge people like themselves. That's the idea, right? If you select yourself into a first-person battle royale game, you are expecting other people who know how to play a first-person battle royale game, even if it's new. You can self-select yourself into a puzzle game, for sure. Like I could pick puzzle games that I'm good at. However, the mentality of a puzzle game is that you want to pick something you're bad at, because the whole value of a puzzle game is to learn something new. If you don't learn anything new, the motivation's gone. It's not very satisfying. People don't like the generalized mentality. You are paying to be stumped in a puzzle game. You are not being paid intellectually to be stumped in a PvP game. Mechanically, maybe. Yeah, like mechanically for sure. But mechanically is a physical attribute as well. Puzzle games. Is there a physical puzzle game? Maybe? I'm not sure if there's a physical puzzle game. There's some like voice related and eye related puzzle games that could be loosely physical, I would say. Yeah, there's some puzzle games that require like incredible hand-eye coordination, I suppose. Oh, I can get the stealth buff now. Wait, did I already have the stealth buff? Yes. Okay, so we're gonna go... Okay, so we're gonna go ham on bleed. And then just wipe the floor. Whoops. Did I just screw up? No, I didn't screw up. No, I did screw up. Dang it. Son of a... Can something like Neon White be considered a physical puzzle game? I was thinking of Neon White recently. Like, because I was thinking of Neon White as one of the titles. Possibly. Possibly. The one downside, I would say, or the one side that I'm having trouble constituting is if the mechanical nature, if the logical nature of Neon White is restrictive enough. It's kind of like a puzzle game because it's very restrictive. So here's the thing, right? Yeah, if you see speedrunning as a puzzle, that's what I was about to go into. Fictitious knows where I'm Fictitious already knows where I'm going with this, actually. There's a point of optimization when you're playing against a system where it becomes that you're looking for the singular optimized solution, right? And that kinda embodies the essence of a puzzle game. There's an optimal solution. So, yeah, it comes down to what Fictitious says. If you see optimization, like the pinnacle of optimization as a form of puzzle solving, which I do have a game that is a card battler. Library of Ruina feels more like a puzzle game than it feels like a card battler. It's not about scrapping it out and stuff a lot of times. It's more about just knowing the system and making the quote-unquote correct out. So I would say one of the essence of a puzzle game, which is all these, like, let's just think of, I'm visualizing games with sliders. Just imagine, like, there are 10 core properties that characterizes a game. One of them is how restrictive it is, how restrictive the solution is. On the one end of the spectrum is puzzle games. On the other end of the spectrum are sandbox games. So as you're going and you're proliferating the spectrum from 0 to 10, 10 being sandbox and 0 being puzzle, the closer you're restricting yourself in the form of a success, the more you can start to feel like it becomes a puzzle game, because you're looking for the pieces to success, just the pieces, not multiple pieces. So in a sandbox game, you're just like, whatever, like, do whatever you want and anything works. So that's, and then you have all your other genre of games somewhere along this number line. Now the property that I was talking about, intellectual challenge, puzzle games are at the 10 range, where the whole point, the one motivation of playing a puzzle game is you start from 0. A great gold standard of a puzzle game is you have no idea what the heck you are doing at the beginning. And then the whole reward process is feel like you kind of know what you're doing by the end of the game. And at the 0 end, what is the most casual thing that we can think of? It would probably be first-person shooters. Is there anything more fundamentally transferable than aim? Actually, I take it back. It's probably clicker games. We'll say clicker games. Clicker games are fundamentally at the other end of the spectrum. That's mobile games, millions and millions of dollars. The ones that sell the most are games where you only fundamentally have to click and match things. Match 3 games and clicker games. And maybe even auto RPGs. We'll probably throw in some auto RPGs. Those are like fundamentally at daily end. When you pick up another clicker game, you fundamentally know how to succeed with 0 context. No context required, just click, you win. And then, you know, in between, yeah, like model RPGs. And then in between, we have, you know, your scattered stuff, right? I would say first-person shooters are closer to clicker games at the 0 end. And 0 not meaning bad and good. It's just the intensity. So puzzle games is 10 in intensity. It just feels awful most of the time. In fact, honestly, I kind of feel, with a lack of a better word, I kind of feel brain dead whenever I start a good puzzle game. If a puzzle game that knocks it out of the park, I start and I just have no idea what I'm doing. And then all you're doing is you're spending the first like 3 hours reading and trying to figure out what the heck is going on. That's usually 10. It's high intensity. It doesn't give you any reward in terms of visuals or anything. It's just you trying to figure it out. What's at 10? Learning a new language. What's another? And when I mean learning a new language, I don't just mean English, Japanese, Korean. I mean scripting language. Try learning a new scripting language, a lower level language. That is 10 because you have no framework. The only thing you can possibly do is just learn the foundations. Without learning the foundations, you can't do anything productive in that system. So that's where puzzle games are. It's the closest thing to that type of learning process, abstraction process. But you can learn a lot of different things. It's just those things have transferable standards. You know, how do you win in a battle royale game? Last man standing. At least you know that. When you go into a puzzle game, you don't even know if it has anything to do with other players yet. There are competitive puzzle games, but you don't even know if you're competing with anyone yet. It's not guaranteed. You don't know what the rules are in puzzle games until you start them. What's what? Did I mention something that didn't? Sorry, I saw the what's what, but I couldn't figure out what I said when I was along the way. Alright, we gotta set this up actually. Let's set this up. Should I put speed? Does she gets... Oh wait, I forgot the stealth thing. What up? Do I need more speed? Nah, I think we're good. Okay, this time I'm gonna confirm before I screw up again. Should I just take poison anyways? 1, 2, 3. No, that's not enough points. We're fine. Wilbur. Ooh, wait. No. It would be awesome. Oh wait, powerful. Powerful is a thing. Does he get powerful? Oh, model. Oh, sorry. Not model RPGs. Idle. Sorry. Or auto. Idle or auto RPGs. Sorry. That's yeah. Auto as in like automatic. and they're usually called idle RPGs, where you just click, right? You click and then it does its thing. And what you do is it's kind of like simulation. You adjust your characters and then you click. Adjust your characters and click. So you're basically getting a feedback from literally bootstrapping. You're quite literally just bootstrapping your outcome. So you learn nothing about the process. You can be successful without learning absolutely nothing about the process. All you require is changing things out and looking at the results, which is like the purest form of empirical testing, in my opinion, which is bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is the most empirical test. Yeah. Yep. So, in the end, though, you learn different things. It's just the thing I was talking about was intellectual taxation, and that's just not friendly. It's a lot of times when it comes to games, it's not necessarily, and I'm not saying, and we have to take into context the trend. What is trending has the lowest intellectual intensity for the current time. So what we're playing right now, what is the most popular, is the most receptive in terms of difficulty. If a game reaches a point of grand difficulty, it can end up being unpopular. A game that's unpopular isn't necessarily bad. It can also be extraordinarily indifferent. Basically right now, and actually historically, puzzle games have performed poorly in general because of its incredibly unapologetic standard in making people feel uncomfortable. So it's very understandable. It's kind of like, do you really constantly want to play a game where you have to relearn everything? Legacy is something humans love. And the one legacy is, yes, it can be challenging to play against another human being, but you are also playing against something that's the most comfortable thing you can possibly think of, which is another human being. If you play against an AI that doesn't care about your feelings, that might be a different story. But at least what you can do is, hey, you headshot someone from like 500 feet away or something, or whatever, 500 meters away or something. You can celebrate. You know what the reward is. You know how rare that is. In a puzzle game, there is ways to compete in a puzzle game. And the way you compete is based on performance, which goes back to speed running. In a lot of newer puzzle games, the ones that deal with performance, that have tons of solutions, like infinite solutions. These are called circuit puzzle games. Your efficiency of your circuit is compared to the efficiency of the entire pool of players. And I'm gonna tell you now, those things feel absurdly awful if you want to be the best at it, because you'll come to realize that there are people who are incredibly brilliant, and that's another aspect. But that's a competitive puzzle game, in case you're curious. The most competitive puzzle game is like generate 1,000 something in using the least amount of compute power, right? Whatever compute power is, and you get a leaderboard on who has the most efficient ones. However, the PvP aspect of the game made it requires that the puzzle game be loose. It doesn't have one solution. It's no longer restrictive. You are no longer forced to think a specific way technically. The only way you can force yourself to think a specific way is if your method is not as efficient as someone else's method. And those games, because they are leaderboard bound, they have to have multiple solutions. They have to have an infinite array of solutions. Which, what does that do? It makes the game less obtuse. And actually those games, those puzzle games, are more popular than the games that only have a few solutions. Did you not? You can go into the genre of puzzle games and order them based on the degree of freedom of the solutions, and you'll see that if they have more solutions, they are more likely to draw more players. And the popular games are popular because many more people can coexist in that game community. So being a puzzle master, for example, being a monster expedition player expert isn't going to make you another puzzle game expert if you're looking at those types of puzzle games, because those skills are not really transferable outside critical thinking. Critical thinking is the one common skill, and that's the skill that I enjoy the most. So it's why I like puzzle games. That's more or less the explainer of why it's the most rewarding process. Playing puzzle games inform me what I can and cannot think like at the moment. I think we're gonna do powerful. Let's try to get powerful. Powerful, maximum charge on this hero is increased to 2. Can it have no decay? Oh, it can't have no decay, so never mind. Plus 5%. I was kind of really hoping to get powerful. Oh, I can do this though. He can slow. That's good. Okay. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I play my daily drivers, like my MMORPGs, like they were idle RPGs. I don't even pay attention anymore when I play them. My daily drivers are auto RPGs. What I mean is they're MMORPGs, but I don't pay attention when I'm playing them. Like, rarely do I do, and it's cathartic. I enjoy doing that stuff. It's all good. All right. Let's quickly set up our party so that we don't lose and all that stuff. Quickly set up. See, this is bootstrapping right here. Right here. What do I... Battle plans, right? I don't even take... Do I take Blood Rage? Do I take 2 Blood Rages? You know what? I don't even take Blood Rage anymore. I skipped every time. Yeah, so what we learned from the first time, we don't even use Bloodbath anymore. It's just, honestly, I kind of liked Furious Slash, but we don't really need that either. I like these types of games. I do the thing where I like my learning curve to be smooth. I mean, I'm a bit smooth brained, but games like these, you have players, right? Entertainers and players who would be like, oh yeah, give me the hardest difficulty. I'm just gonna bash my head against the wall and get that one complete. That's great. That's great. But I think more of a puzzle person. I'm really oriented to be like a puzzle gamer. What I do is I start on normal diff. I start on easy diff, normal diff, maybe slightly hard diff. The thing is I use that to experience all the tools, and I'm heavily optimizing to give me headspace and headroom And the moment I turn it to the hardest difficulty, I'm set for that. And then all the new challenges with the hardest difficulty will be smoother than the one. So my favorite type of learning curve is a puzzle game's learning curve, which is like just it leans you in. Here's rule 1. We're going to give you 10 puzzles with rule 1. Here's rule 1 and 2. Or actually, a lot of times they introduce rule 2 and then they introduce rule 1 and 2 together, and so on and so on. So I learned like most education systems would have you learn. So most of the time, that's how I go about it. I'm a very turtle. I'm not a hare in this race for knowledge. That's a great way to summarize how a puzzle game works. There are games that may be really obtuse. I don't know. Sometimes it feels good to do. Not as much, in my opinion. You get thrown in and hope you swim kind of games. But I feel like that's far more receptive than... Because that's how... People are really receptive to that. Or much more receptive than I would imagine. At the moment, the current trends. Anyways. Okay. I like building up. What'd you call it? Earlier we talked about bottom-up approach and top-down approach. Again, to emphasize, I'm a bottom-up approach most of the time. I don't like taking extremely complicated things and just taking it for face value. It's kind of interesting. It's worth mentioning. Here's a fun hot take. One of the most common cognitive dissonance that I observe, at least personally, observe in other people's disappointments and expectations, you know, like their overall mood, is the dissonance between what they want to do and what they think they're good at. One thing that happens a lot is that people like to think they're competent top down. Oh no, they're competent bottom up. But they desire everything to be top down. I'll give you an example. And this is any example. There's plenty of examples. You'll find it every day, generally, if you look. Let's just say 7 out of 10 people you would hear them say something like, "Oh, this is very simple. You just do this and you get this." And it'll be like a really complicated topic, like let's not do some deep cuts. How to get good at first-person shooters. Like how to get good at PUBG. Well, you aim at heads and you like do this and that's easy. You know, that's top down. You basically just simplified something that is the amalgam of playing against humans and all these odds and all the mechanical things. You just simply reduced it. So you're competent. They assert competence in that way. However, when it comes to arguments and how to build up that competence, they often rely on a bottom-up approach. It's like, well, how do I get better at this game? Well, you know, it's all about clicking heads. Okay, so how do you click heads? Well, you know, you take the cursor, so they start breaking it down. So to explain things, to support arguments, people like to reduce them to their components as much as possible and make it sound simple. But every time their competence is challenged, they use a top-down approach where it is simple because all they can do is think simply about a complex topic. So what happens a lot of times is someone would say, "I don't get it. I do this and this and this, all these foundational bottom-up things, but I'm not getting better at the game. And it's a dissonance. You're not approaching... You're trying to be competent top-down, but all you're doing is trying to appreciate the game bottom-up. It's not on the same wavelength. You're focusing on an output that is super, super complicated, but you're using super, super simplified metrics to measure the complicated output. So for example, is your aim improving? Winning more games doesn't necessarily mean your aim is improving. Losing more games doesn't necessarily mean your aim is improving. Like, the thing you're thinking about, your competence, is measured top down. But all the things you do is practicing bottom up. So you're not actually measuring the thing you think you're trying to improve. All of it adds together and eventually contributes to the top-down approach. Like, winning more games is everything put together. But in the meantime, why are you using a metric that can't be measured by the things you're doing? It's a holistic approach. So often, if you're wondering, what I'm alluding to is a lot of people are upset with themselves, often confused, often looking for answers. But what really, in my opinion, is the source is reconciling the difference of how to solve a problem, how to measure the solution and the efficacy of your method, and what it really actually means holistically altogether. So in terms of video games, that happens every day. Like, oh, I want to increase my rank in a game. I want to get a higher rank. So I'm going to hyper focus and reduce this complicated thing to its moving parts. And then I'm going to practice these parts hoping my rank goes up. But really the method is you're going to measure your progress of those individual parts, and you hope that they add up and interact to increase an output that may be desirable. But in no way the things you practice in isolation is going to directly correlate to the thing all the way at the top, the really complicated thing at the top. And that includes competence. Competence is a great thing. Oh, you're really great. You're a really sharp aimer. Therefore, you're a really good first-person PvP player. There's so much between having good aim and what constitutes as a PvP, an excellent PvP player. That's what causes people to be so upset with themselves. Like, in my opinion, I don't have it, a lot of times when I'm talking to them or discussing with them, I don't have to argue anything. I'm only simply stating what they're telling me, and it sounds like an argument already. So someone, for example, a hypothetical person would approach me and ask me, you know, how do I get better aim? Well, you know, spend time aiming. I'm like, so are you telling me that if you just do any type of aiming, it'll improve your aim? Like, that would be my first question I would ask them. And they'd be like, yeah. And then I would ask them, how would you measure it? It's like, well, that's complicated. Like, well, yeah, it is. Because you can't connect something so complicated and reduce it to something so simple and try to measure that last thing and see how the connection is. The first thing you do is you have to decide how you're going to measure the different components that you can appreciate and hope that it leads to a conclusion to something that's complicated. The reason why it's so you're reducing it into parts is because the thing you're trying to measure is too complicated to measure like by itself. So in science, methodology and metrics lead to an interpretation of the results. They do not lead to results. So like get good at dribbling. So you just dribble a lot and then you'll get better at dribbling, and somehow better dribbling makes you a good basketball player. That's the type of logic that I see all the time, in my opinion. When I ask someone, how do you improve your lifestyle? How do you get happier? How do you approach something? It's often, I want to be a nicer person. I want to be a nicer person. And the first thing they do is they say, well, I just help people. The more people I help, the nicer I am. I'm like, well, the act of, helping people is already complicated enough, but helping people is so far away from someone thinking you're nice or how nice you are. And often the first question I would ask is, how do you think helping more people make you nicer? So that's the first question I would ask. I would have no contributions of my own ideas. Like literally, I would just be asking questions for the first 2 to 3 hours, because the idea is, for me personally, is to get the other person to convince themselves or to understand themselves that the things they're measuring and practicing, I hope they can agree for themselves somehow that it's measuring the thing they want. And then I will go and ask, do you think this is true? Because I want to contribute something that differs. And often my first take is, it's a leap of logic. First of all, it's a leap of logic. And that's what science struggles with all the time, because it's hard to get at the complex question, is we can't understand the complex question. So we have to reduce it. And then we measure as much as we can and then interpret, and hopefully it gives us more information about the complex situation. But the answer is, it doesn't lead generally to that complex situation. Your fingertips are feeling nice and stiff. Did you play today, golfers? All right, that's a good digression. I'll put it in the VOD somewhere about I don't know what we're even talking about. I'll think about it. But we got to get back to this.